By our very informal count, there have been at least 20 movies in recent years with the word nightmare in the title. Nearly a dozen on Elm Street alone. We asked Tracy Smith to help explain why so many of us prefer scary nights to sweet dreams.
As if the real world wasn't scary enough, we celebrate our fears every October. On Halloween, the creepy costumes come out. And every year, it seems Hollywood trots out a new movie with a familiar plotline. Halloween Kills is the 12th. Yep, the 12th installment since 1978.
I want to take his mask off and see the life leave his eyes.
And you probably remember your first Halloween movie. But did it give you bad dreams or a nightmare? There's a difference.
Let's start with the definition. What's a nightmare?
Most people think nightmares are just about fear, but they can really be any really negative emotion.
Dream expert Leslie Ellis.
For a lot of people, that it's a really bad dream, really bad emotions, and they wake you up, and they're very vivid and easy to recall.
In fact, nightmares, like some horror movies, can be unforgettable. This is the Hollywood Museum in Los Angeles, where you can see props and costumes from Jason to Pennywise. And at least some of these films, like the ones with Freddy Krueger here, were actually inspired by nightmares.
If I have a nightmare, I'm so excited. The first thing I want to do is write it down, because it's like this goldmine of imagery that you'd never get otherwise.
Director Eli Roth knows. As a kid growing up in Boston, he was obsessed with horror films. His early drawings were filled with scary movie scenes, and he had himself sawed in half at his bar mitzvah, much to the dismay of his relatives.
That was your bar mitzvah?
That was my bar mitzvah. I was just a weird kid.
And that weird kid grew up to host Eli Roth's History of Horror on AMC.
Creepshow is presented like an EC comic book from the 1950s.
It's a show about the kind of movies that you'll see in your sleep.
None of us like having nightmares, but they're actually very healthy to have because you're acknowledging something you're afraid of and you're letting out and expressing it. I just take my nightmares a step further, and then I write it down, and I film it, and I project it onto everybody else.
You share your nightmares with the world.
Yeah.
Roth even played a character who tried to give Nazis nightmares.
Should have killing Jews.
A Jewish-American soldier with a baseball bat. Of course, you don't always need a bat to knock an audience out. Sometimes the image of pure evil is enough to keep people up at night.
A census taker once tried to test me. I ate his liver with some fava beans and a nice Chianti.
Talk about nightmares. This is the actual set that was used in the filming of 1991's The Silence of the Lambs, the only horror movie ever to win a Best Picture Oscar. So, how many of us have been told, well, you shouldn't watch horror movies because they'll give you nightmares? Well, it turns out that nightmares may actually be a good thing. In fact, some experts say there's really no such thing as a bad dream.
That's kind of a controversial statement, but yes, I believe that all dreams are trying to help us sort through our emotional lives. Sometimes they represent physical illness that the dreaming sort of picks up on early warning signs.
In other words, our brains help sort out the day's events and anxieties, big and small, while we're asleep. When our dreams scare us, we like to figure out what they mean, but it's not that simple.
Really, we don't put a lot of stock in trying to understand the meaning of nightmares or anything like that. That's also kind of older Freudian psychology, which it's not very scientific.
Wait, so back up. So all this dream interpretation that we've done, okay, if my teeth are falling out, what does it mean? You guys don't really rely on that?
We don't. So 100 years ago they did, but there's no scientific evidence to suggest that any of that stuff is valid. So we really don't worry about that anymore.
Psychology professor John Abramowitz says dreams shouldn't be taken literally. What matters more is what's causing them in the first place. He runs an anxiety research clinic at the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill, and says that we can tame our worst fears, in nightmares or in real life, by confronting them. That's what Leah here is doing. She's the person on the right, and she wanted to get over her deathly fear of spiders.
Awesome.
She allowed the clinic to record her session with a tarantula.
Oh God, she's moving towards me.
At first, she tried to stay as far away from it as possible, even by crawling under the desk.
Oh my God.
But after about 3 hours, she realized that the spider wasn't going to bite her.
Where's your anxiety from 0 to 10? I don't know, I can't think. Okay.
And she was able to manage her anxiety enough to let the spider take a walk on her arm.
So in the same way that you encourage people with anxiety to lean into their fears, if we're concerned about our nightmares, we should lean into them?
We should, and effective treatment involves having the person recount their nightmares, writing them out, engaging with them in a healthy way, rather than trying to push them away. Lots of research suggests that when we try to push away our private experiences, thoughts, emotions, that just makes them worse, because then we become preoccupied with trying to push them away, and those experiences end up just kind of pushing us around, bossing us around more than they need to.
So, embrace your nightmares? Absolutely, says director Eli Roth.
There's clearly something beneficial in facing these fears, facing our nightmares head on. Mm-hmm. What do you think it is?
I think there's a human need to confront our fears so that we realize that it's not nearly as bad as we thought, and that it's stopping us from being our highest selves.
And the takeaway here may be as cliche as the car that won't start in a horror movie. Follow your dreams, even the ones that scare you.